The Trevor Jackson Podcast.
Well, we want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner, which is what many of them, not all of them, but many of them are doing. Our museums have an obligation to represent what happened in our country over the years, good and bad, but what happened over the years in an accurate.
I've been hearing this word fair a lot lately, man. Even with the Amanda Seals debate that she had, that word fair was coming up a lot. I'm a person that likes to learn. So I would appreciate it if the people that watches this show help me further the discussion in the comment section below about how important is this history. What do y'all think about this museum? Is it important to y'all? Because I feel like we have to protect what the ancestors went through. We have to protect the lineage. We have to protect the history because the farther and farther like these things has happened, the less people give a damn. And I understand it's only right that they don't give a damn because they haven't experienced it or they don't even care to learn about the situation. And I'm far from a victim. I'm here to tell y'all that now. I'm far from a victim, but I like to be knowledgeable about these things and these experiences, and not just our history, all history. I'm intrigued by history, period. Like, I remember at one point in time in my life, being a historian was a thing. Researching and gaining knowledge about the past was a thing. It was a thing that you could get a degree in and go on and build a career around that. Now we have the government intertwined and removing history, trying to remove artifacts and museums and close down museums. And I just want to, you know, educate myself. And this is a research show and research what's been said in these articles. And we got to be careful about reading these articles because the headlines of articles will get people flustered, get them in their feelings and their emotions to get you to react and start acting crazy. So we got to really do our research on this. First, I want to read the Smithsonian's bio. It said the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History is a renowned institution described as the world's largest natural history museum with over 148 million artifacts. It is a key part of the Smithsonian's Institution, the world's largest museum and research complex, which includes 21 museums, 14 education and research centers, and the National Zoo, and isn't federally funded. The museum was established with a mission to promote the understanding of the natural world and our place within through its extensive research collections, exhibitions, and educational outreach programs. The museum's primary mission is to promote and understand the natural world. So we're gonna get into this article. I feel like, this is crazy just to hear this and see people reaction from it. And I don't see too many independent media platforms and people of all race talking about this, who usually talks about politics and the left, the right, the liberals, the conservatives, the this, the that. I don't see them talking about this, like how important history is. Do people care about history? Our history has been removed and we don't know why people act and react the way that they do. You could tell history has had an impact on this country because people identify with something that isn't even a reality, black and white. So Trump escalates attacks against Smithsonian Museum, says there's too much focus on how bad slavery was. Now, being a person that been to this place, I'm gonna say something. When you go to the beginning of this place, because this is a massive museum, it's gonna take you 2.5, 3 hours to go through it if you really reading and doing your research. It might take three to You can be in this for a whole day if you really, really getting down to business on the research. So I can agree, you know, too much focus on how bad slavery was. You can't tell American history without talking about slavery. If it's too much focus on how bad it was, how good was it? How can we talk good about it? Is it having an impact on Trump? Like, does he feel some sort of way when he's in that place? Because slavery had an impact on people that you can't remove that history. So I wonder what he wants to do. Because I haven't really, I have, like I said, I haven't seen too many people talking about this. So when I went in this place, it was dark for a long time before it started talking more about African American history beyond slavery. So I was in there for about 2 hours before it got beyond slavery and started celebrating the life of black people. So it was a long time. And I could see how that can have an impact on an individual, but should it be removed? No. I don't feel like the artifacts or nothing should be removed. It's the truth. If it's the truth, it's the truth. And this woke, like people talking about woke and stuff all the time. What's like, what aspect of woke is bad? Because the word woke, to me, being awoke isn't a bad thing. Being aware, that's all it sounds like it's saying to me. So awareness is bad. So President Donald Trump escalated his campaign to purge cultural institutions of materials that conflict with his political directives on Tuesday, alleging museums were too focused on highlighting negative aspects of American history, including how bad slavery was. In a Truth Social post, Trump directed his attorneys to conduct a review of museums, comparing the effort to his crackdown on universities across the country. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how bad our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden has been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future, Trump wrote. I don't think that it's talking about, me being, because I've been twice. It's not talking about how bad the country is. It's talking about the acts of the people that did bad things to people. Is if it's, they want to remove that aspect of history. And in that intro that I played, he talked about history, the bad and the good need to be told. But he want to remove aspects of history because it's not talking about success. It's not talking about brightness. It's not talking about the future. So you should talk about it and change that instead of trying to change the past. Don't worry about the past then. Worry about the successes of the now, the brightness about now. You don't have to, it's people from all over the world that come to see that history. And it seems as if he's trying to clean up DC because he don't want the people from other countries to come see how bad the country really is with the homelessness and the crime. He's trying to clean up the museums because America is about to be 250 years old next year, and he wants to be able to tell his story and his message and his thoughts of what America really is instead of what the truth is. Trump's comments come days after the White House announced unprecedented sweeping review of the Smithsonian Institution, which runs the nation's major public museums. The initiative, a trio of top Trump aides wrote in a letter to Smithsonian Institution Secretary Lonnie Bunch III last week, aims to ensure alignment with the president's directives to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institution. Restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. You know, it is it, America is an exceptional country. But for some people, that's not their reality. You know, restoring confidence is a good thing in the cultural institutions, but you got to restore confidence in people's financial lifestyle, the safety of people, uh, you know, create a space where it's no hindrance to individuals, uh, remove divisive or partisan narratives. He's making partisan decisions to be able, he's making a lot of partisan decisions in his administration right now. These are not bipartisan decisions, a lot of the things that he's doing. Uh, but he want them partisan decisions removed from museums. It's crazy. The letter said the review would focus on public facing content. The curatorial process to understand how work is selected for exhibits, current and future exhibitions, planning, the use of existing materials and collections, and guidelines for narrative standards. On Wednesday, a Trump aide leading the review echoed the president's comment, saying she had seen an overemphasis on slavery at museums. A overemphasis. I think there should be more of an overemphasis on how far we've come since slavery. You know, it could be other stories told about the hindrance of a race beyond slavery because they could start telling how a cruise was done in Wilmington. I talk about it a lot on my channel. They could talk about the history of Juneteenth when the message wasn't sent out that everybody was free now and people was continuing on being, you know what I mean, condemned over time. They could talk about the Red Summer of 1919. They could talk about a whole bunch of stuff. It's still not as positive. They could talk about how African Americans went to war and didn't get to benefit from the GI Bill. It's a lot of things that could be said, but they want to paint this narrative as if it's just sweet and everything is better now, when that's the reality for them, but that's not the reality for all. Overemphasis on slavery, the removal of history is crazy, and the lack of give a fuck that people have on history is even more crazy. I think there should be more of an overemphasis on how far we come since slavery. A former Trump lawyer who is now his senior associate staff secretary said on Fox News. Bunch, who has served as secretary of Smithsonian Institute since 2019 and his first African American to hold the position, has made multiple comments about the importance of education people about slavery through the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Specifically, he told Smithsonian Magazine that part of the purpose of that museum was to help a nation understand itself. Was to help a nation understand itself. An impossible task without the full recognition of the horrors of slavery. I agree with that. Let's get into this. See what they're talking about in this video.
Here's how President Trump is defending his review of some of the top museums in the country.
We want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner.
Director Spike Lee has items featured at several Smithsonian museums. And when we recently linked up to talk about his latest film, Highest to Lowest, I asked him what he thought the goals of this review are.
To roll back the clock. To roll back the clock. And what's interesting is that the world leaders, they know what's going on here too. The citizens of the world know what's happening here in the United States, formerly the so-called beacon of democracy. It don't look like that now.
And you don't think America is still the beacon of democracy?
You know, you got to choose countries or people, individuals, by their actions. And I don't think that the actors now in this administration show that doesn't look like the beacon of democracy. Beacon of democracy to me, in my opinion.
You know, it doesn't look like a democracy to me, also, Spike. But listening to that video again of Trump talking about the story of America needs to be fair. Tell it all, then. You know, tell the full aspect, the whole story, make the Smithsonian make a larger place, because the actions that happened previously to create slavery, was slavery fair? People feel as if what had happened was fair. If he's talking about the story being told in a fair aspect, well, give reparations to the people. That would be fair also. Exhibitions at the Smithsonian take years of planning and are heavily evaluated by a team of scholars and cultural experts before they make their debut. Janet Marstein, a museum ethics expert, said that demands laid out by the Trump administration set the Smithsonian up for failure. Nobody could provide those kinds of materials in such a comprehensive way in that short amount of time. And so it's just an impossible task, she said. The White House has asked the Smithsonian to provide a wide array of materials, from internal emails and memos to digital copies of all place cards and gallery labels currently on display. Wow. What's interesting about this also is that they made this massive place and it's completely free to go to. Completely free, and they want to make these changes. The Smithsonian declined to comment on Trump's latest remarks. A White House official asked about the attorney reviews process Trump described, said the president will explore all options and avenues to get the woke out of the Smithsonian and hold them accountable. Still, Trump's efforts to target colleges and universities, which he is now comparing to his focus on Smithsonian museums, has been even more aggressive. His administration has moved to strip federal funding from higher education institutions for a variety of reasons, including allegations of anti Semitism and failure to comply with certain policy changes. Columbia University recently settled with Trump administration for more than $220 million dollars, and Trump has also been in a protracted battle with Harvard University after his administration froze $2 billion dollars in federal funding. Goodness gracious. What is this imagery they showing? A previous unknown portrait, circa 1868, of Harriet Tubman is displayed at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. in March 2019. Man. The Trump administration's push to align federal support with his cultural agenda has extended beyond the nation's capital. The Institution of Museum and Library Services and the National Endowments for the Arts of and the Humanities canceled tens of millions of dollars in federal grants earlier this year, affecting small museums, library initiatives, arts programs, and academic research projects across the country. Trump has previously praised the Smithsonian museums, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which he toured during his first term as president. That's crazy too, man, because like he's cutting funding back from the smaller ones. So this education, this stuff that people researched for years and years, is going to be just like a thing of the past. People will have to create a museum independently on their own and then would have to charge for something that used to be free because it was representing the country in an educational way. This is crazy. I'm deeply proud that we now have a museum that honors the millions of African American men and women who built our nation's heritage. especially when it comes to faith, culture, and the unbreakable American spirit, Trump said during remarks at the museum in February 2017. Later that month, Trump said the museum tells of great struggles for freedom and equality that prevailed against the sins of slavery and the injustice of discrimination. I wonder what changed. Let's listen to this video of this brother speaking.
Another day in the finance department. Wait, did we pay this already? 6070.
I'm gonna keep reading until that commercial goes off. I didn't know that they had a commercial on this, but earlier this year, Trump signed an executive order that put Vice President J.D. Vance, who serves on the Smithsonian Board of Regents, in charge of stopping government spending on exhibits that don't align with the administration's agenda. So they have an agenda. He also tasked a former member of his legal team, attorney Lindsay Halligan, with helping to root out improper ideology at the Smithsonian. So let's get into this clip.
Filmmaker W. Kamau Bell. It's so great to have you here with us. Let's start first. I just want to get your response to what Betsy was just talking about there. The president's move to review the Smithsonian, and if you think what you think about this larger effort to reshape the telling of history.
I mean, I learned in history class that this is how authoritarians operate. They take over the arts, they take over the culture, they take over the museums. And so this to me is a further effort for Trump to put his stamp on America, and not just for 4 years, but forever. This is another effort for him he wants, the museums are supposed to tell the story of America by Americans, and museums over the course of history get better at telling the story and involve more voices in those stories, which is why the Smithsonian opened the National African American History Museum to tell the Black story of America. Clearly, he does not like the fact that these stories are diverse and tell bigger stories. And like authoritarians do, he wants to tell it from his perspective.
We are also expecting the president to announce his Kennedy Center honorees today. This after he's really kind of taken over the Kennedy Center. He's gotten a whole new board that he's installed there. Several artists earlier this year decided to cancel their performances. You didn't. Tell us why, and tell us more about your thinking around this.
I mean, obviously, I didn't cancel because I'm hoping to be honored today as a Kennedy Center honoree. Obviously, I was trying to get my name in the hat.
Obviously.
I'm a stand-up comedian. Yeah, obviously. So I'm a stand-up comedian. So the thing about being a stand-up comedian is I get to go into that room and say whatever I want to say, as long as there's a punchline somewhere at the end. So I got to go in there and speak very freely and criticize the president and his administration in a way that a lot of people who are performing at the Kennedy Center don't have access to that, because they're performing an act, they're doing a play, they're playing an instrument. So I respect like Rhiannon Giddens for canceling her performance, because that's what she needed to do. But I stand in the very large stand-up comedy footsteps of George Carlin, Wanda Sykes, Margaret Cho, Dick Gregory, and others who when it's time to speak truth to power, that's what you do.
Yeah. And so looking forward, I mean, what do you think with things like the Kennedy Center and the arts, as someone who is in the arts? What do you think is the best way forward in light of kind of what we're seeing in today's environment?
Well, the thing that people don't understand about the Kennedy Center is we think it's a national institution, but it's really there for the people of D.C. And if he programs the Kennedy Center in a way that the people of D.C. don't want it, then it will be an empty center no matter what the name of it is. So he has to, and that's why with the cops rolling into D.C. right now, and with him putting troops in D.C., it's about he wants to take over the narrative of the city and take it away from the people of D.C., which is why we need D.C. to have not only just home rule, but statehood, so they can determine what their institutions and police force do.
You know, removing the arts and the history is crazy from the people. Making educational schools and things not be able to receive funds unless you're aligning with our agenda is crazy. Who's to say that your agenda and your perspective is right? I never seen a president lose come back in office in my lifetime and gets on the ground running and is going all out like how Trump is. He's going out. He's going crazy right now with the stuff that he's doing. He's doing a lot, a whole lot. And this man is, I think, 78, 79 years old. Not saying that age has anything to do with it or whatever though, but it's just interesting to see how he's moving. Let me continue to read. Earlier this year, Trump signed an executive order that put JD Vance, who serves as the, I read that already, stopping government spending and all of that. Yeah. So museums in our nation's capital should be places where individuals go to learn, not to be subjective to decisive narratives, the executive order said. I didn't see that it was a narrative. Like I didn't see narratives when I was at that place. I feel like what they was telling me was things that I had already knew. It's important to pick the brains and of the older people in your family or the older people in your neighborhood and community because they know the history they may have lived during certain times and things like that though, but it's getting to a point to where people are dying off that was from the late 40s early 50s now. Once the people that is the baby boomers is gone and they trying to remove all of this history, this is going to be an interesting place because folks don't even care about it anymore. So the Smithsonian began a review of its own in June and has reportedly stressed its commitment to being nonpartisan. The institution told CNN in July that it was committed to an unbiased presentation of facts and history and that it would make any necessary changes to ensure content meets our standards. The Smithsonian was established in the 1840s by the US with funds from the estate of James Smithson, a British scientist, as a unique trust instrumentally that is supported by federal funds. It is not an executive branch agency, which makes it a complex question whether the Trump administration has the ability to control its exhibits. It is governed by a 17-member board of regents led by Chief Justice John Roberts. You know, it was established in the 1840s by the U.S. with funds from the estate of James Smithson. This is an independent thing. This is not a federally funded thing. So, how is he going to make these demands? Trump's moves to review and alter the Smithsonian's institutions have sparked intense debate, including CNN News Night with Abby Phillips. We about to get to that right now because I feel like that was a important video to play. I really like Abby Phillips too. A lot of people be talking crazy about Abby. You know, she's dope to me. She's a black lady. Now, I know I'm reading CNN articles. I let Spike Lee talk. He was on a CNN show. That other man was on a CNN show. Me, I'm an independent individual. I don't have a liberal bone in my body. I consider myself conservative by force. I explained it to a brother in the comment section on one of my last episodes because he didn't understand what I meant by conservative by force. And I say a little bit of it here. It's that I had to conserve. So, and I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I don't know nothing else but conservative values. It's not too many liberal people there. It's people that want to give off a perception that they Democrats or that they liberal individuals, but it's no way that you can possibly even be that, being from that area of the state of Tennessee. It's just impossible. So my values and things, and a lot of black folks are more conservative than they want to allow themselves to be. So CNN, I'm just reading this thing because I'm trying to get up to speed. And Abby Phillips and them had a great discussion on CNN, and we about to check it out.
I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Last week on this show, a guest shocked the table by arguing in part that slavery in America can't just be blamed on one race, and that museums put too much focus on the role of white people who participated in that terrible institution. And now tonight, that same argument is being pushed by the President of the United States. Donald Trump says that one of the reasons for his crackdown on Smithsonian museums is, quote, everything discussed is how bad slavery was. What we try to do on this program is create a platform for discussion and debate that reflects the very real differences that exist in this country. It's what echo chambers in our society fail to do, frankly. But on this topic, it's important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad. It was evil, the nation's original sin. And it is impossible to understand the true history of this country without fully grappling with slavery's impact. Simply because of their birthplace and the color of their skin, the bodies and spirits of Black men, women, and children were exploited for profit and power. They were forced onto ships, bound by shackles and collars that ripped off their skin. One older man described it as iron entering our souls. Some chose to jump into the waters infested with sharks rather than feel that iron. Now, once they arrived on this very soil, they were forced to work by way of the whip, despite being starved, sleep-deprived, threatened, tortured, physically and psychologically. They were auctioned off, humiliated, fearful, and separated from their families and their children. Black women and girls were raped and sexually assaulted. Many were brutally murdered and mutilated. Now, this endured for decades, centuries. And even in the places where slavery was not legal, institutions from our banks to universities were built on enslaved labor in both the North and in the South. And for many of the white Americans who did not personally own slaves, they benefited from a caste system that concentrated wealth and political power in their hands. So when we
Before they have their conversation, I want to say something. I didn't hear one lie. Some people will say that she's speaking like a victim so they can combat what she's saying. Some people will say, well, that was the past, like it doesn't have an effect on now. Some people will talk about the banks, the insurance places that has benefited from that. It hasn't even been 400 years since that happened. So those places don't have to make money for years and still profiting from the free labor that they got for so many years. She didn't say nothing wrong. And speaking about this isn't wrong. It's not victimhood to speak about a reality that had happened. But some people will try to make you feel like that's a bad thing. It's we in a weird state.
acknowledge the existence of Black people who operated George Washington's Mount Vernon or the Black hands that built the White House, we are acknowledging the existence, the perseverance, and the contributions of the souls that white supremacy sought to erase. Those people built families, they developed a culture, they were the keepers of the faith, cultivators of community. And they are the ones who deserve credit for forcing America to rid itself of the stain of slavery. Now, all of this information, these stories are from the Smithsonian's African American History Museum. And I share this not as a lecture for you, but as a lesson. America, the superpower, is largely possible only because of the superpowers of people who went lifetimes without the same rights of generations who were boosted from their backs. True history should include everything. Yes, the evils and the horrors too. And museums are supposed to be places that protect those stories, the images, the lessons, the very things that inform so much of our current state of our republic, from racism to poverty. No matter how painful, or in the president's words, how horrible the lesson. Now, just listen to one formerly enslaved man describe what slavery is like in his own words.
You know what I'd rather do? If I thought that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog.
We are here in the studio with our panel, Leah Wright Rigueur. I was actually surprised to see President Trump basically saying the quiet part out loud, that this review of the Smithsonian is not about even just something vague about reviewing history to make sure that it's fair. He wants to make it so that it talks less about slavery. What does that say to you?
Well, I think it's an effort. It's part of a larger effort to both stainwash and whitewash American history and essentially erase all of the parts and disappear all of the parts that make Americans, that make President Trump uncomfortable, that feel distasteful, that are a reflection of the actual real and horrific parts of our history. And I find it a little ironic. You know, earlier today, as I was listening to some of the commentary, my first thought was, wait a second. I wonder if the president has actually ever visited any of the Smithsonian museums. And then I remembered that in 2017, he actually took a tour of the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Let me just play actually what he said during that tour. Listen to this.
I had the privilege of visiting the National Museum of African American History and Culture right here in Washington, D.C. It's a new, beautiful Smithsonian museum that serves as a shining example of African Americans' incredible contributions to our culture, our society, and our history. It also tells of the great struggle for freedom and equality that prevailed against the sins of slavery and the injustice of discrimination.
I'm going to let it continue to play, but I want to say something. This is a sign that, you know, he really isn't the leader of the country. He's just the voice, because a leader isn't going to switch positions like that. They're going to stand firm in what they mean the whole time that they're in power and in leadership. This is something that has transpired that he's in his feelings about, or somebody's in their feelings about, or something happened with January the 6th, or when he got assassinated that made him change his mind. This is just very interesting. And I got some commentary I want to talk about the Cracker Barrel also, because this kind of is strange that both of these things is happening at the same time.
The work and love of the people who helped create such a masterpiece is a testament to the legacy of so many leaders it honors.
So was it that he didn't believe what he read from the teleprompter as he recorded that video, or what?
You know, I'm really struggling to understand in a lot of ways, particularly given that the tour that he took with director Lonnie Bunch was actually a reflection of really the mastery that and really the care and the patience that historians, that scholars, that curators put into the Museum of African American History and Culture. It is not just about the horrors of slavery, although it tells that very important story. It actually follows this really brilliant model where you move through the museum and it tells the story not just of enslaved Americans in America, but also of the resilience, of the triumph. And in doing so, it tells a story that is very much about democracy and about a quest for democracy and the way that Americans both built this country, but also the story and the narrative of like a truly American experience. And
if y'all been here the whole time that I've been conducting this podcast, this whole 40 minutes, when I first came on, I talked about my experience at the museum and how it starts off with the ships. Then it goes into the history of slavery, the cotton picking, the building of the White House. Then it goes into how bills was passed in the Constitution to include Black people. Then it gets further along down the line and gets to the success stories of Oprah Winfrey and Olympic people, and how Black folks fought in wars and stuff like that. What's the brothers from Alabama? I feel bad for forgetting their name right now though, but the brothers from Alabama that flew the planes in the wars and stuff, and how we was excluded from the GI Bill, and it tells the success stories of black people also, and then you leave out. It's just a time frame thing. And I feel like, it's right to start with slavery because that is I don't think that that's the start of, because some Americans, blacks, are foundational to this country because those white individuals also are not from this land. Just like how some of the African people that were slaves are not from this land. And it's a lot of people don't believe that hundreds of thousands of people came here by boat. But if you don't believe that, then it's a lot of things that you can't believe. I don't try to second guess the knowledge that I was taught or second guess history. I second guess things, but if it makes sense and somebody make it make sense, then I'll believe it until somebody show me some proof that it didn't happen. Just like you don't believe that they came over here in ships, you don't have no proof that they didn't. If you do, show it to me.
So for the president, I think, to just simply erase that and push that away tells us, particularly after praising it a few years ago, tells us that this is part of a much larger agenda. This is part of a much larger agenda to erase things that really, I think the country is just refuses to deal with and is really uncomfortable with.
He said as much by ending this post with, "This country cannot be woke because woke is broke." He says, "We have to have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including our museums." Why is he equating talking about slavery with woke?
Well, look, I think, let me just start this conversation by saying that my personal view is slavery was a reprehensible institution. I agree with your words that it was our original sin. We also fought a war to eradicate it and to get over it as a country. And that was a necessary thing that happened, and a lot of people died, and we did eradicate it, and that's a good thing. I think what he's asking is, in our museums, what defines us? Are we going to be defined by the worst moment or the worst institution or the worst mistake we ever made? Or are we going to be defined by what we've done moving forward to get over it and to become the greatest nation on the earth? My belief is that he wants to look at these museums, not because he wants to do away with the idea that slavery occurred, but that he wants to ask a very simple question. Are we going to present ourselves as being exceptional or not? And I think he believes there is an effort by some to continue to try to define us from our worst moment instead of try to focus and define us based on our best moments, which started when we eradicated slavery and began to move forward as the light of the world. And so that's what I think.
Museums, that's what makes us an exceptional nation, is because they tell the history and the story of our country, and therefore, these horrible, horrific moments in our history. The original sin, as Abby talked about, when it comes to slavery, has we of course did eradicate it, but look where we've come today. And I think those museums, like to your point, make America exceptional. And in museums all around the world that document atrocities, whether it be, from Nazi Germany to eradicating slavery here in the United States, you have to learn the lessons of the past, and to deny it is to defend it.
I don't think he's denying it. And Bachi may want to comment on this as well. But I think what he wants to ask is a simple question. As we present our history, are we spending most of our time focused on something terrible? Are we going to spend more time as we enter our 250th anniversary focused on what this country has done to improve the lives of every single person who lives here? We are the light of the world for a reason, because we're an improving commodity.
What he's saying is interesting to say that, because that's like in defense of what's being done. Why can't you tell both? Why can't you tell both? Why can't you tell the history and tell what's been done to make changes and continue to make the changes? It's because a narrative is powerful, and Trump is doing everything that to keep people mind off of the Epstein papers, to keep people talking about things other than what people want. This is a distraction, actually, from what the people really want. Let me see what their response is.
When I hear you say that is why, I mean, the idea that slavery happened, it's hard to understand what we've overcome if you don't even talk about what it was. I think that kind of waters down the whole
I don't think anybody is
experience.
proposing that we ignore that it happened. I don't think that's accurate.
I think that the problem is that there are people, and Scott used the term a couple of times, and I don't think it was meant with any type of ill intent, but he said, we got over it. And I think that's the problem. I think that there are a lot of people in this country who believe that for some reason we got over it. I mean, the fact is that American chattel slavery is vastly different than what Jillian Michaels and others talk about when they talk about slavery around the world. I mean, the chattel slavery system that we had was extremely transactional. It was actually codified in law, and it was based upon the color and race, as you so eloquently pointed out in your opening. And so not only when you think about that portion of where we are, 26 of our first 30 Supreme Court justices own slaves. The people who are on our money every single day own slaves. United States presidents, members of the United States Congress own slaves. Lehman Brothers, we're not far from Wall Street, own slaves. Brooks Brothers suits that we wear own slaves. So not only are we talking about the epicenter and the foundation of where our country was built, we have to acknowledge that. But even more importantly, and this is where I believe that Scott and I can find agreement on this issue. Breon and Megan Walker, two of my best friends in the world, their dad was the first African-American SGA president at the University of South Carolina, right? He was an exec at IBM, but he was one of the first, right? We're still talking about first that emerged and stood on those shoulders. I tell the story often about my mom and dad. My mom helped desegregate high schools. In Hamilton High School in Memphis, Tennessee, my dad shot in the Orangeburg Massacre. This is a part of my story. This isn't some faint, distant history. Yeah. And so the reason I bring that up is because I think that American exceptionalism talks about the fact that Black folk help, enslaved folk help build this country for what it is. They built Washington, D.C., but all of us are around this table. Abby, myself, all of us, not just Abby and myself, all of us are around this table because of the sacrifices and the blood and the sweat and the tears these people poured in.
I would like
to. I got 2 points I want to talk about, then I'm going to get up off of this thing. I highly appreciate everybody that supports my channel, that watches my channel, that, stand with me, man, and enjoy this content. When he said got over it, and then he talked about how actually relevant it is, he had some key points. He made the female smile. I seen a smile on their face. And getting over something, like, it's a point in that museum that I think is very impactful to leaders of this country. It talks about how the slaves was freed, but they was freed with no nothing. Like they didn't have no jobs. They didn't have nowhere to go. Like, you can't free a people and not give them no type of economic structure or a system. They didn't have no system. So what did they have to do? And we was proud to integrate with people. We was proud to be a part of what they had going on. We fought for integration, our people, because when we were segregated, it was hard. It was hard. We couldn't, we was surviving and we was thriving on our own, but it was hard. So at that time, we wanted to integrate and get over it when a people was freed. And I'm not a victim. I'm straight. I'm straight. When a person was freed and didn't have any resources, freeing a person with no resources is crazy. Letting a person go with no resources is crazy. But the brother also talked about first. I'm tired of hearing the first Black person to do this, the first to do that, celebrating the first to win this and the first. I don't I don't care about that no more, because that lets you know that people have been limited with access. Also, I'm going to close it off with this. Trump was just complaining about the cracker and the barrel being removed from Cracker Barrel. But you expect to not get any backlash from trying to alter and remove artifacts from the African American Museum. That's blasphemous. Real talk. Thank y'all for tuning in to my show, man. I appreciate y'all. Let's further the discussion in the comment section below. Peace, love, plenty of abundance. Make sure you go get you some money and I'm gone.
The Trevor Jackson Podcast.